What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I know you guys have been patiently waiting for the ultimate tattoo battle, and trust me, it's right around the corner. This will be the biggest production we've had on the channel, so trust me, it'll be worth it. We just gotta put a little extra TLC into it. I'm super excited about it, and I know all the people that are working on it are super excited about it as well. So go ahead and subscribe, and you'll be notified when it comes out. But for now, let's check out some apprentice tattoos. Once again, welcome back. As I said before, we are going to be checking out some apprentice tattoos, and the first one is sent in by Panda. You mentioned in the email that your goal is to become a color artist. Well, congrats. It looks like you're already doing it. You said you've been apprenticing for about 8 months, and the first one you sent in is this little sea turtle. It's not too bad. I think my biggest gripes with this tattoo is the solid black areas, and I do think the color could be bumped up a notch. When it comes to the solid blacks, not only could the lines be improved upon, but when I look at those little black areas in the fin, it just seems a little patchy. If you look at this area on the bottom of the shell, that line that runs all the way across, it looks like that line kind of got away from you in a couple spots. I wish I could see more of the lines, but it looks like a glare is running right through most of it, so I can only say so much. Maybe try using a CPL filter with a nice lighting system to get a better quality picture. Now, as far as all those black dots on the fin, they do look a little undersaturated, and I think that's easily fixable if you just go back into it after it heals and just really fill in those black areas. If you're having trouble with saturation, maybe try slowing your machine down a bit and just take your time to fill all those little areas in. Now, as far as the color goes, I think that's just some contrast issues. Don't be afraid to use a dark green mixed in with those lighter greens to give it a nice bump of color. Same thing with the browns. You can use some dark browns and blend it in with those lighter browns, and it'll just give the tattoo an overall nicer feel. And I'm not sure if I'm seeing this right, but I think I am. It looks like there's some white underneath the turtle's body in between the fin. And I'm not sure why you put that in. It's unnecessary. This person is pale as so I just don't see the point. But as I said before, overall, really not bad. You're still figuring things out after 8 months. But let's check out what else he sent in. This cute little octopus. And again, same thing with this one. I do think the contrast could be bumped up a bit. And that's by adding these darker tones blended in with these lighter tones. Not only would some black help, but adding some nice deep magenta into those darker areas, into that lighter pink, would really help this out a lot. Same thing with the blues. Adding some darker blue into some really nice light blues will just really help add a lot of interest. I know it seems counterintuitive, but adding darker colors can really help make those lighter colors pop a lot more. Not only that, it'll help the tattoo last a lot longer as well. I do think you could have played around with some line weights on this tattoo, add some nice thick outlines around those front tentacles, and as they go back, use a thinner liner. It'll just help add some depth and make the whole thing look a lot cooler, rather than more flat as it's sitting now. And same thing with the last one. The lines could use a little bit of help, especially around those eyes. They're not really very consistent, but that generally comes with time. So again, not too bad, Tia. I think you're on the right track. Keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much for sending those over. Up next, we've got a couple sent in from Noodle Head, and Noodle Head, you said, "I hope all is well, Tony." Let's pump the brakes. My name is Pony. Get it right. Really starting off on the right foot here. Anyway, Doo-Doo Head, you mentioned that the Rose and Buddha were your first tattoos, but I'm not seeing a Buddha in this email. It might be one of those invisible Buddhas. I don't know. It's not showing up. Either way, let's check out this rose. You said you tattooed this thing after about 3 months of being in apprenticeship, and this is a very difficult tattoo to tackle after only being an apprentice for 3 months. That being said, you didn't do too bad. It could use some thin lines around the inner parts of the rose that are sitting closer to the viewer's eye. It just helps give a nice focus to the tattoo. Overall, the shading's not bad. It could definitely be better, but I do really appreciate how you moved the mag on that bottom petal in such a way that it gave it a nice shape, rather than just pushing those shades from the outside to the inside of the petal, which generally gives the rose a flat feel. So good job there. There are a couple things that catch my eye. The first one being that leaf on the top right, how you have that little extra thing that's hugging that leaf. It just feels unnatural and out of place. Had that gone almost straight out, it would have just looked a bit more organic. The other thing are these little chicken scratches that are on that middle petal. It looks like you tried to add texture with the liner, but it wasn't working, so you bailed. I could be wrong, but that's just what it looks like as a viewer. Other than that, as I said before, I do think you could benefit from using a very thin liner to outline some of those petals around the middle of the rose. It just makes it a lot cleaner. But let's check out this other one that you sent in that you mentioned was your graduation piece. And the first thing I will say about this tattoo is, it is massive. It goes from butt cheek to knee. This thing is huge. And from a personal opinion, I'd rather see a very solid looking tattoo as a graduation piece rather than something so huge. Bigger is not always better. But that being said, I am very surprised at you doing this as an apprentice, especially around that 3-month mark. This is a pretty big undertaking. Now let's break it down. The first thing, unfortunately, which catches my eye are these white highlights around the nose and mouth. It just seems a bit unnatural. My general rule of thumb for whites is to only use whites when something is wet, reflective, or shiny. You don't really need it around the nose or mouth. Let the skin show through and it'll look a lot softer and more realistic, rather than using the white, which is making it look too crisp. White also draws our attention as a viewer, and we want the attention to be mostly on the eyes. I think having white on the lips is okay, as lips are generally somewhat wet. And even in the whiskers, I think white is fine because you do need some sort of separation there. But the less you use white, the more impactful it is. So use it with intention. Because if you use it everywhere, it makes the areas that need it less impressive. But I will say the hair is very nice. You've got some nice V-shapes in there, and those V-shapes are generally what make hair look realistic. It's those areas where the hair either parts or comes together, rather than just straight down. You do have some nice shades in the face as well. There's not really any needle marks, which is good to see. It just leaves the face feeling nice and smooth. The little amulet at the bottom, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be perfectly circular, because it's not. It honestly looks like you could have spent a little more time near the bottom. Even when it comes to her chest, it just almost disappears. If you look at the top of the tattoo, in the tiger's fur, it looks like you spent a whole lot of time there. And when we come down toward the bottom, it just looks like you spent hardly any time at all. But for somebody who's only been apprenticing for a few months, you're taking on a lot, so I have to applaud that. And you didn't fuck it up. So congrats on that, Noodle Head, and thank you so much for sending that over. Tony out. All right, real quick, I want to take a break and give a shout out to the sponsor of our channel, Mad Rabbit. Mad Rabbit is a tattoo aftercare company that has something for everyone. Whether you're a new tattooer or a longtime veteran, they've got you covered. So head on over to madrabbit.com and check out all they have to offer. And be sure to use code PONY20 to save 20% off your entire order. All right, let's get back to it. Up next, we've got a couple sent in from Connor, all the way from Australia. And Connor, you said you were 3 months into tattooing on this first one. And this one is super bold and vivid. But I will say, from what the skin looks like, is the camera's vibrancy setting was probably set a bit too high. Regardless, that doesn't take away from the quality of tattoo that this is. Speaking of tattoo photos, if you'd like to learn how to take proper tattoo photos, you can check out this video right here. Regardless, this thing is badass, and I'm super shocked that you've only been tattooing for 3 months. This one's got some really solid lines and some great color packing. From the orange in the tiger's fur to the red in the tongue, these colors are just screaming. I do love the blue on the tiger's top teeth, but I do wonder why you didn't add a little blue to those bottom teeth as well. It doesn't really take away from the tattoo, so I'm not that worried about it, just curious. I will say that the upper left eye is a little wonky. It could be better, but those lines are solid. I don't really mind the line weights on this tattoo. They're not really varying so much, but I do wonder what it would look like if you added a thicker outline around that upper left eye. It would just help pop that eye out from the rest of the tiger even more. The tiger stripe on the right side of the face is a little weird for me. It just looks like one long black line. It doesn't really match the left side, but I feel like I'm nitpicking there. Excellent job for 3 months. You did send over another tattoo that you said was about 5 months in. And similar to what I said about the last one, the reddish purple colors on the client's leg make me feel like the vibrancy setting was just a bit too high when you took this photo. Regardless, this thing is also put in very well, because even if we were to put this picture in black and white, it's still got a lot of contrast. I will say I'm absolutely loving the line weights in this tattoo. The big, thick black outline around, I'm gonna call him Charizard. If you know me, you know I don't know my Pokemon. This isn't the Pokemon channel, okay? Anyway, the thick black outline around Charmeleon and the thin outline around the flame is amazing. Charmander, Charizard, Charmeleon. I know the 3 stages. Give me some credit, okay? Again, you use the orange and blue, which in this case are great contrasting colors. I do love the Pokeball edition, however, I didn't see it right away. I do think you could have backed off from the black in that area just a bit, because it kind of gets lost in the tongue. I think I was a little confused because of that little blue streak, which led my eyes there, which I then saw the Pokeball, which everything should be readable right away. And I do think that blue streak is supposed to be saliva, but again, I shouldn't have to figure out what's in the tattoo. The saturation is a little troublesome when it comes to the browns blending in with the oranges. I do think those blends could be a lot smoother. The same thing could be said for those pinkish magenta areas as well. It's not so much the saturation, it's just the blending, because these colors are in there. They're not going anywhere. But I do love the contrast this thing has with all those blacks. That's something I think a lot of apprentices could work on. Great tattoos. Being only 19 years old for tattooing under a year, I think you're right where you need to be. Thank you so much, Connor, for sending those over. All right, up next, we've got a couple sent in from Charlie Wallace, who's been tattooing for just over a year. You also mentioned that you struggle with taking photos. Check out the video here, but let's check out this first one. With this first one, I gotta say, it doesn't bug me that much, but I feel like this tiger is backwards. Generally, you'd want the face of the tiger facing forward. Just makes sense. I do see you were working around other tattoos, but I don't see why this tiger couldn't have been moved up a bit and flipped around. And I can't help but notice that tiger's front right paw is funky. I don't know how they're gonna catch a whole lot of prey with that thing. It looks like that little chinchilla or a porcupine is taunting this tiger, because he knows that thing's not working. Anyway, the lines are okay, nothing crazy. I do wish those little furry parts where you just have the lines stacked next to each other had a little bit more flow to them. And what I mean by that is, give them a little more angle. You almost want to make them hug each other where they come together, rather than just straight up and down. The little heart is a cute addition. The teeth on the tiger are a little questionable. It looks like he's got 3 fangs on the top side. Maybe just keep those outer 2, because if you don't see that furthest fang, it looks like his teeth are in the wrong position. One little design flaw I see is how that tiger stripe on the head runs into that tiger stripe on the back. That could have been easily fixed, just move one of those stripes over. You just want to avoid making those tangents where 2 lines come together. The more I zoom into this tattoo, the more confused I get. The nose is a little weird. I'm not sure where the nose ends and where the other little puff of his cheek begins. Also, the top of the head where the left brow meets that ear is just a little confusing. You want to make sure you have your designs rock solid before putting it on skin. It just makes for easier work as well. If we compare this tiger to Connor's tiger, I gotta say Connor's tiger takes the cake. Or the possum. Or whatever that is. Let's see what else he sent in. The chaos lettering on the middle of the chest. It almost seems as though you're surrounded by chaos. Obviously, the C is the most wonky thing about this tattoo, and I think lettering is a fantastic thing to do for apprentices because it really helps refine your skill. Not only apprentices, but I think lettering is great for seasoned artists as well. It just really helps retain your skills even years down the road. But something like this should have been bulletproof, especially for tattooing around a year. The little hang tag on the S is also a little strange. Don't really know what it's doing there. And the saturation also comes into play. The A looks okay, but every other letter, I can clearly see the skin showing through. And on solid black letters like this, that really shouldn't be the case. You did mention that the chaos was off-center because the other tattoos were off-center, but to be honest, I wouldn't have even noticed. Not much to say about this one. Let's check out the third one you sent over. A tattoo like this, I think, is great practice for an apprentice because it's nothing but straight lines. If you have any sort of wiggles, you're gonna see it. Much like the line coming off a flower on the left. The one on the right just looks a lot cleaner. And similar to with the tiger, I see another design flaw where that line comes into the petal. There's no reason one of those lines couldn't have been moved over just a hair. Also, how these lines from these petals come into the leaves, it's the same issue. Problems like that can flatten out a tattoo really fast. It does seem like the right side of this tattoo is a lot stronger than the left. I'm not sure why that is, it's just something I noticed. I do think you could have shown some darker stippling throughout this tattoo just to show some depth, like in that middle petal for instance, just to show some sort of variation. But I will say you handled working over those scars pretty well, because it doesn't really look like it affected you in any way, which can be hard to do. After looking at all 3 of these tattoos, I think the thing that you should be working on the most is consistency and working around those design flaws, because they seem to be a reoccurring issue. As I said before, I think doing tattoos like this is great practice for just that. You just want to make sure you fix them on your design before applying them to skin. But thank you so much, Charlie, for sending those over. And last but not least, we've got a few sent in from Dev out of Austria. The first one you sent over is this demon-looking character surrounding what looks to be some sort of skin tone figure. That's what we're gonna call it. I do like the approach on this one, however, I think the solid blacks could have been more saturated. I shouldn't be able to see the lines around the eyes. Just make sure you take your time, go nice and slow, and fill in all those little nooks and crannies. The light shading around the figure is pretty consistent overall, not too much to say about that. Although if they're supposed to be surrounding a human figure, it doesn't really look like a human. It almost looks like some sort of glass top to a bottle. I don't know. Not too bad. You sent over some flowers as well, which to me look a bit nicer than the last one. However, I do notice some lines that are missing or not connected. I'm not sure if that was an artistic choice, but it doesn't really read that way. Like this line here, coming down from this petal, it just kind of stops, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know if that was an artistic choice, but since it's not really anywhere else on the tattoo, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think the lines could be stronger in some areas, like this very leftmost petal. It looks like it got a little weak before it hits the body of the flower. And also this petal up top, it kind of looks like the line got away from you and you did a double pass. I know the insides of these flowers can be difficult to tattoo, but you almost have to simplify it to make it nice and clear, because this leftmost flower does get a little muddy on the inside, at least compared to the flower on the right anyway. Overall, not too bad for the size. I'm not complaining. Let's check out the next one. All right, now I do really like this tattoo, mainly for one reason, and that's the line weight around this leg. That thing is nice and thick and super crisp. I almost wish the line around the entire chainsaw was this nice. It doesn't have to be as thick, but it could still be as crisp, especially the little teeth that are on the chainsaw's blade. Even the shapes around this leg and foot I really appreciate because of its sharp edges. It's not just a round heel or a round knee. You've got these little crooks here that give it some really nice character. I do think red could have been a nice addition to this tattoo where the blood is spraying out. Not necessary, but I think it would have been a nice touch. Overall, I really like the character and application location of the leg and foot, but I think it does lack a lot of luster when it comes to the body of the chainsaw. It just goes to show you that even in a small tattoo like this, you can show a lot of technical precision. Do I think the shades could have been a little bit better on this tattoo? Sure, but I think the nice crisp lines that this thing has really hold this thing together. Looking back on all your work, I would say do more lines like this, even on that flower tattoo, because not much beats a strong, clean line. It is the foundation of most good tattoos anyway. But for tattooing for only 8 months and working 2 other jobs, I gotta give you credit. But thank you so much, Dev, for sending those over. Alright, that's gonna do it for the critiques, but you know I gotta pick my favorite of the week, and this week I have to give it to Connor, aka Mr. Silly Goose. For somebody who's only been tattooing for 3 to 5 months at the time these were sent in, man, you really stick out. In a good way. These tattoos are rock solid, and I love the way that you applied these different line weights. I think you've really got a good grasp on contrast when it comes to designing a tattoo. And to me, having good contrast is what makes a tattoo last a lifetime. You gotta have those blacks and dark colors. Once again, congrats to you and congrats to your clients on having such cool tattoos. Keep it up and update me in another year, because I'd love to see where you're at. Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this Apprentice episode. I hope you guys learned a lot. If there's something you agreed with or didn't agree with, let me know in the comments below. I love to read them. But don't forget to subscribe and check out the merch below. As always, I will see you guys next week.